Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. Tonight's a special night. It's basically boxing night. We have a crazy matchup tonight. We have in the right corner Donald Trump, president, current president, hopefully president in the future. And in the far left corner of the ring, we have Joe Biden over there. I'm joined tonight by my friend Matt, who's going to be watching with a crowd of people tonight with me, and sorry if you can't be with us tonight. But yeah, so I wanted to go over some of the things with the debate going on tonight. We have basically about an hour and a half until the debate. There's a couple things to talk about, what to be expected, what Trump should focus on, maybe what Biden should focus on if he was interested in winning, and he's not going to get our tips in the time anyway it takes to get to the stage. And it doesn't really matter because he's going to have an earpiece in no matter what anyway, most likely.
As you said, this is shaping up to be the Thrilla in vanilla, as we have two octogenarians almost squaring off.
Even funnier than that is the fact that after all this time through the primaries and everything with the Democrats, shooting for a minority candidate, it is vanilla as possible with the whitest old guy available to him, even though that's what they've been railing against for years.
Indeed, but to play on that one more time, the Thrilla in Manila, this time Manila would be the envelope that most of these ballots are going to be being sent in. Chaos is sure to ensue.
Absolutely. So we're going to go over, let's talk about what's to be expected, what's going on with the polls right now, if you really think that the polls are really correct. I have my feelings. What do you expect coming out of tonight?
Out of this tonight? I think it's well, I don't want to make a prediction, but I think it's certainly Trump's job just to hold his own, to let the American people who may not watch Fox News or his broadcast to know the accomplishments of his first term and why he deserves a second. And of course, for Joe Biden, at this point, the expectation is if he's still standing and breathing at the end of the hour and a half, that he will have somehow survived and therefore won the debate. I think he has to do more than that. I know for me personally, I'm watching Biden tonight and wondering, is this a guy who can sit across the table from Putin or from Xi or from Abe and have, real intercourse on our behalf? So we will see.
Intercourse, I like that. That's what Joe Biden.
Well, you asked me about the poll, and there.
I'm just wondering if he could actually survive the night watching the Golden Girls across from the other people at the nursing home at this point, to be honest with you. But so
yeah, well, is that true that last time Trump brought Bill Clinton's accusers to the debate, and there's some rumor that he's bringing all of Biden's victims this evening. So that is
spacing standards from COVID. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, there's like 40,000 12-year-old girls outside waiting.
Yeah, some interesting analysis of one of the swearing-ins of the senator recently. I don't know if you saw that video of the niece that was actually fondled by him and everything. A little crazy on that.
I didn't. One thing on a serious note to watch for, too, there's no real audience tonight, as you alluded to. And that is something that probably plays against Trump's strength because he's somebody who plays off the room and off of reaction. So see if that has any effect on him.
Trump or Biden?
Trump.
True, yeah. To go off of what you're saying there and everything, I think my feelings are, as I had mentioned to you earlier, is that this is really Trump's to lose tonight. All he has to do is stick to being professional, which is going to be tough for him, I know. If the Twitter Trump shows up, it's going to be a bad night. If the Trump shows up that is energetic at the rallies, that has a sense of humor, that can play to the audience, even if he can just imagine the audience right in front of him and everything with the sense of humor that he has, which never comes through in the media. I think that he has a really good opportunity. Just sticking to the facts. If he starts knocking at Joe like crazy and hitting him hard, I think it's going to be hard for the American people to get past his long-standing problem, which is that he's a bully.
I totally agree with you. Trump needs to stick to the facts and try to be as presidential as possible. Obviously, he's going to want to try to rile Biden and push him where he wants him to go. As far as Biden's concerned, he will what's that thing? Biden? Yeah. Biden needs to avoid that. That's what Biden needs to avoid right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be the job of the president tonight, is the fact that he is going to have to go out there and very professionally needle Joe Biden just ever so slightly, bringing up little topics like Hunter Biden and the amount of money that he got from the Russians and the millions of dollars from the oligarch's wife or something like that.
The mayor of Moscow, I think.
Yeah, right. So, just playing into the fact that as Vice President Joe Biden, gave his family opportunities to make millions of dollars in areas that they otherwise had no professional expertise in even being in those fields to do that. The ties with China and everything as well. But if he can get under his skin, Joe Biden has shown that in any of the campaign stops, when anybody challenges him, he is unable to not fly off the handle and start challenging people to push-ups or asking them to go outside like he's going to win in a street fight or something like that. And we know that Trump is a street fighter. I mean, this is what the guy's dealing with right now.
I don't want to see the president doing push-ups. I don't think that would be good for him. Captain Big Mac.
Yeah. So, what do you think are the topics that Trump should focus on tonight?
Well, again, I think the candidates are not thinking about talking to 100% of the electorate. They're thinking about talking to the 1 or 2% that they need to sway right now in different, obviously, communities. For Trump, I think he needs to concentrate on the things that he's done. I'd like to see more of what I saw at the RNC. I'd like to hear highlighting things that, whether or not I agree with them or not, because I'm already voting for him, things like the First Step Act, talking about the Family and Medical Leave Act, talking about the cuts in regulations and how that helps business, and the fact that he built a booming economy. And here we are after the pandemic. It's going to need to be done again. I don't want to see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi in charge of our economic fortunes. And, you know, I have a daughter, you have children. So paying for college and getting back to work and those things are all important things. They're kitchen table issues is what we're talking about.
And if you were to be giving advice to Joe Biden, what should he try to be focusing on to win this?
Well, first you should just try to focus. Focusing itself would be a good victory for the former vice president. I think Biden likewise, but I think, again, he needs to prove that he's not a guy he needs to prove he's in control of his thoughts, in control of his facts, and in control of the moment. Because one of the fears I would think for the Democrats would be if the public sees Biden as aloof, that he is a Trojan horse for socialism, that with him sort of not knowing what's going on and what's happening, that it's the bureaucratic and administrative states that are running things. And that would be very scary to people, I think. Suburban.
I think the consensus tonight is the fact that Joe Biden, according to what the media has been pushing the most lately, is going to be trying to focus on the fact of the COVID situation in the United States and how many people have died from that. Where I think that that's going to end up failing for him is the fact that at the beginning of this, Dr. Fauci and the CDC were estimating about 2 million deaths from this in the United States, and we just hit 200,000. And even that number is not really true. But even if that number's true, we're still talking about Trump keeping it to 10% of what the CDC said it was going to be. So that is a win for Trump if he keeps on bringing that up with him. Now, real quick, why don't you come on that, because I have something.
Well, I was just going to add. I see that I get lost in all that, so I don't know how many other voters like me would get lost in that. Biden would or Obama would have said we saved 1.8 million lives. I don't believe the numbers now. I didn't believe the predictions then. And frankly, if there are lives saved, then that seems the credit would go to these lockdowns and things like that, which again, no scientific evidence exists to support. So I would like to see that subject not discussed at all. I think most people do not understand it, and I don't think it's a winning.
If you go on Facebook, everybody's a medical expert.
We are all experts, even you and I right now are experts on everything. But I think Trump should try to avoid that issue where possible.
Okay, so here's where I think Trump should focus his attention. Not only listing off his accomplishments, which we're going to actually go over some of the accomplishments that I believe I took from a large list of accomplishments that I completely agree with being accomplishments, and narrowed them down to basically accomplishments that I believe that even the liberals should be able to agree upon that maybe didn't even make the media.
Anyone taking bets on this?
Well, there's a couple in there that are specifically ones I know that the liberals won't like, but that I think is a huge deal for the conservative, the religious right, and everything else. Obviously we have a interesting couple of weeks coming up with Amy Coney Barrett and everything as well. But let me just tell you what I think that President Trump should focus on tonight. He has to push the message that he is the president of pre-COVID, that no one could have handled the situation much better. You know, the Democrats keep on coming out and saying that under Trump there were 200,000 deaths. Like magically, if Hillary Clinton was in office, there would be 0 deaths. let's just face the facts here. There's no way that this could have been a zero-sum situation in the United States when no other country has figured that out. No other country in the world has figured out a zero-sum situation for this. So for them to throw that in his face is absolutely ridiculous. But he needs to focus on his accomplishments pre-COVID. And by doing that, he needs to go over those and then go into what COVID actually spotlighted in the shortcomings of America. Okay, so what I mean by that.
Well, if I just jump in on that one real quick. I'm sorry. I think one of the things that Trump can point out is that we live in a society of federalism. And so it isn't the responsibility of the president. First of all, now there's big negotiations over should the feds bail out the states. It is not the feds' job to pay for local police departments, local fire departments. And we all know that every state could go through their books and find money they're wasting on tons of useless programs and, pet projects and things like that. So why I should be paying for California's police departments is just insane. But one of the things Trump can point out is that it's on tape. All of these governors, Jay Inslee in Washington, Cuomo in New York, Newsom in California, they've all said he gave us everything we asked for. New York ended up with so many, the breathing machines, ventilators. Thank you. So many ventilators. There's my Biden moment.
Yeah, well,
he ended up with
Obama would have called them respirators.
Fair enough.
Or inhalers.
He ended up with so many ventilators that they were loaning them to European countries. Trump sent a ship up the West Coast and up the East Coast. There was something like 4 patients in New York on whichever ship was sent up into New York. The Comfort. Okay. So I think he needs to highlight that it's not the role of the president to micromanage how each state's going to handle these things. Obviously, in South Dakota, you had no lockdown. You have very few cases. That seemed appropriate for them. It would have been awful for South Dakota if there was some national lockdown, national mandate. So I think he can highlight that as a help.
So I think we're going to definitely hit on micromanaging tonight, because I think that the situation for all the protests around the country is going to come up, and how the democratically run cities are being destroyed by the Antifa activists and the extremists of the Black Lives Matter movements that are burning down the minority neighborhoods. They're not doing anything. The Democratic mayors are not doing anything about their cities. They're telling Trump that he can't bring in any federal support, and then they're blaming Trump for the situation. So they're not allowing him to come in and actually help. And here, real quick, I think that this is actually going to be a situation where Trump is going to have to tread carefully, because one thing that he has to stay away from the most in regards to projecting a type of image is a dictator authoritarian role, right? And if he promises tonight or in any of these debates to, once he wins the election, send in the troops and assume control in a martial law situation, that's scary for Republicans as well. That's scary for conservatives. That's scary for constitutionalists, because if you allow that door to swing open. And
Trump hasn't shown, in my estimation, any signs of wanting to do that or threatening to do that, or even maybe even having the authority to do that. I think he's handled it well. Let's be honest. If you want to look at Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, Washington, that's what Joe Biden's America is going to look like, period.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. So let me go back to the COVID situation, because I think this is really important. I think what Trump needs to focus on in these debates is the shortcomings of America that were spotlighted by the COVID situation. And all those shortcomings actually tie back to the Democratic Party. As soon as the virus hit, we almost immediately saw concerns of shipments for goods and service, well, mostly goods, coming from overseas. Well, why is that? We increased the corporate tax rate so much here in the United States that it actually pushed businesses offshore to get the tax breaks, and relied on them actually importing the goods back in here, which also took away American jobs and everything. So one of the things that he needs to promise is to bring manufacturing even more so back to the United States, increase the jobs because of that, which also increases the amount of taxes that you're collecting for all these programs that anybody wants to push and everything, and really push that situation. The next thing I highlight is after the last 4 years, after we were trying to push for the border situation, and everybody's saying, build the wall, and the left fighting us on it, as soon as this virus hit, they started looking at other countries that were shutting down people coming into their countries and going, well, these European countries are doing it right. They're shutting down the borders and everything. And it's like, mother effer, we've been trying to do this for the last 4 years. What are you talking about? We've been trying to build the wall because of situations like this. It's not because, his comment about Mexicans being all rapists was taken out of context. You know what I mean?
It was misquoted, yes.
Absolutely. It has to do with the drug situation, the human trafficking situation, the virus situation, disease coming in, people being untracked and not contributing to the system. There's a lot of stuff that kind of plays into
I'm curious to get to your list of things you think that the left can agree on that Trump's accomplished. Because it seems to me that the messenger is the problem, not the policy.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to go through this. Some of them will be fast. If you want to stop me and kind of go over anything, you're more than welcome to. So starting in 2017, the real median household income rose to a post-recession high. So we're talking about just from the Obama era and everything. Okay, if you want to give it to the left a little bit, the end of the Bush era, beginning of the Obama era, going into the recession and everything, but it hit in 2017 that high.
Well, and if my memory is correct, when we get to the pre-COVID era, say to the 1st of March, incomes amongst the lowest brackets rose at a much higher percentage than those in the higher brackets. So this was an economy that was built, that was booming, but it was best for those whose wages have been stagnant for 40 years, which I think is another important point.
Which kind of goes into the next point.
Youngstown, those sorts of communities in eastern Ohio and those factory towns, Pittsburgh area, those, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to run on, but
this kind of feeds right into it. The African American and Hispanic American poverty rates reached record lows of 21.2% and 18.3% respectively in 2017. The women's unemployment rate recently reached its lowest rate in over 65 years. And along with that, the administration helped launch the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, which would leverage more than $1 billion to support women entrepreneurs for a guy that happens to be a sexist president, apparently, right?
I could tell you now, whoever the Republicans run in 2024 will be an agent of Russia. He will be a sexist. He will be a racist. You can't even listen anymore.
Along with that, 4.6 million Americans were lifted off of food stamps. Now, with the this is pre-COVID situation numbers and everything, which, again, I don't feel that we can put direct pressure on the president. You can put some on him. You know, listen, any president that was in power, I think that they share a certain portion of the responsibility for anything that happened to the economy. I'm not too happy that he put Fauci in charge of everything, you know, but it shows some spirit from him to actually put someone out there. I disagreed with him on a lot of things and actually pushed a narrative on that and made it pretty interesting. Yeah,
tomorrow I'm on the, coincidentally, BLM's podcast, and we're going to be discussing these things that Trump has done wrong in more depth.
Consumer confidence soared under President Trump and recently reached an 18-year high. Well, of course, because the economy was booming under Trump. And that's one thing that if the left has to understand, they have to get out there and they actually have to talk to small business owners and people that were running businesses and everything. Unfortunately, right now, because of the COVID situation, because of dictator governors like Wolf, Cuomo, Newsom, and everybody else that shut down the businesses, the Small Business Bureau, I believe, I forget what exact agency it was that was doing the numbers, are now, a month ago they were saying 40% of small businesses were going to be closing their doors for good. It is now up to at least 55% as of right now because we can't reopen anything. We can't allow these small business owners to get out there and actually open under the conditions that the CDC would allow them to do it under.
I am a small business owner, and so I certainly understand that plight. And President Trump and Biden both should talk to people like me in communities across the country. But I don't think that the broad numbers, that we had the worst economic month in history in April, we had the best economic month in history in August. I don't think that talks directly to people. You need to get on an eye-to-eye level. You need to speak to real things that your policies or your administration would do to address these issues. I tend to like being left alone. That's what I would really like. I'd like my governor, Wolf, to leave me alone. Just let me go to work. And I think that, you know, Trump would do well to talk to suburban America in those terms.
Yeah, absolutely. President Trump signed the Cuts and Jobs Act into law, ushering in the largest package of tax cuts and reforms in American history. The Trump's administration surpassed a 2-to-1 ratio in 2018, eliminating 12 regulations for every new one in 2018. That's huge.
That is huge, and that is, I think, as much or more why we got the economy we got, and that's something he should highlight. And a lot of these regulations, by the way, are double and tripled up. So he's cut them so instead of the same 3 regulations saying the same 3 things, there's 1, which cuts down, obviously, on the overhead that companies have to do to follow these things.
we're going to get into some of the foreign deals that he was actually getting involved with. So President Trump negotiated a new trade agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico to replace the disastrous and outdated North American Free Trade Agreement. And the president renegotiated the United States-Korea Free Trade Agreement to preserve and grow jobs in the American auto industry and increase American exports.
MTA, so far as I understand it, MCA, sorry, as far as I understand, is something by and large is bipartisan. I think I've heard people on both sides saying that it was an improvement over NAFTA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which scares me.
Yeah. President Trump has established a trade and investment working group to lay the groundwork for post-Brexit trade. By the way, congratulations on Brexit. Awesome job. With the United Kingdom, and has notified Congress of his intent to negotiate a free trade agreement with the UK. Argentina has opened to American pork and beef, Brazil to American beef, Japan to lamb and Idaho chipping potatoes, and then also South Korea to American poultry and more. So just opening up more and more business with foreign countries, which I believe is also important, especially in regards to food. I mean,
it's
we
great.
look the way we do because of a reason. We have a lot of food.
It's great, except for you're coming out of a period of 6 months where we've all had to go to the grocery store and you can't find the meat you want. The price of meat has gone through the roof. So I think if China's a winning issue to want to have even trade and put these tariffs on to protect Americans, then I think you got to wonder what happens when our farmers are now shipping their beef offshore. What happens to American beef prices and quantities?
Yep. Okay, the administration authorized $12 billion in aid to farmers affected by the unfair retaliatory tariffs as well. I'm back and forth on that.
It's about as conservative as the Family and Medical Leave Act, frankly.
One of the president's first actions after taking office was withdrawing the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which incentivized outsourcing. America is the largest crude oil producer in the world, and production has hit a record high. This is another one that feeds back into the COVID situation, something that he should bring up. We should not, in times of pandemics and shutdowns, be relying on foreign powers to give us our energy sources in order to sustain our economy and keep things going. We should be able to get all the resources that we can here in the United States, which again also provides jobs to the people that are here.
Yeah, what is the point of having all of these resources if we're going to buy them overseas? It's insane. We are the leads. We have the greatest soil and natural resource collection in the world, and we're finally using them to our advantage.
Yeah. The counter argument to that from the left would be the fact that, you know, some of the processes to get these sources has been damaging to the environment in the past. But I would also point to the new regulations that are put out that, you know, I think a lot on the right would actually agree with for clean coal and everything else. I think we're able to do this stuff cleanly. As
a conservative, which we can say, this is the Gen Y conservative show. As a conservative, you know, I'm proud to be a part of the party of science. You know, Republicans have always been the party of science, where the left has always been anti-science. So I will trust the science when it comes to what's good for the environment. And
I don't think we have to talk about global warming, but
have we? No, but I don't want to cut off your list, but you wanted to do foreign policy.
Well, it's jumping all over.
Please tell me that on that list somewhere is the immense peace deal in the Middle East, the 3 Nobel Peace Prize nominations that he's gotten. This is historic stuff that has barely gotten a mention in mainstream media. He's moved the capital to Jerusalem, which, by the way, is a function of law. It's the last 3 presidents have been mandated to do it and refused to do it. And what he's done is totally juxtapose the whole disposition the United States has taken in the Middle East, and it has changed the metric entirely.
Well, you're talking about the whole Middle East situation in regards to that, and all these different countries that are kind of signing on with this deal to kind of do business with Israel and everything. People that in the past we had questionable relationships with, and Israel certainly had. I mean, they're surrounded over there by these countries. But then you also go to things like North Korea, right? All we've heard for the past 4 years of the presidency, and in year before that of him running for the presidency, is that this guy's a warmonger and he's just going to get us into more wars. When the fact of the matter is, you look at what's been going on, he's the biggest peace dealer in the presidency.
Did I hear this right? He's the first president in the last 50 years, or 40 years, not to get us involved in a new war?
Possibly, yeah. And you know, it just, oh my gosh, the things about Obama, the people that think that this guy was a big savior, he dropped more bombs, I think, than all other presidents combined in the past.
It's not, and who did he drop them against? He droned a U.S. citizen overseas.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Yeah, we're gonna keep on going. Okay, President Trump's policies are helping to boost American energy exports. So not only are we producing here for ourselves, but again, why can't we be taking charge of the world economy and exporting our stuff as well? Now, I believe we should be building up reserves for situations like we're in right now. But yeah, we should be the world leader in absolutely everything because we have all the resources here on this land, especially human resources.
I do disagree with Trump on the tariffs. I'm a Milton Friedman free market capitalist.
But he's always used them as leverage.
But if the alter Trump is the Democrats and the left, that takes us further away from free market capitalism. So I would prefer Trump. If this is what I have to live with to get the rest, I'll take it.
In 2017, the United States became a net natural gas exporter for the first time in 60 years, and the American coal exports increased by more than 60% in 2017. Again, we have clean coal now. So.
What did he say? Big, beautiful coal. That's what he said.
Now,
the Democrats say they'll shut down coal. Oh, Trump says big, beautiful coal.
Well, look at what Governor Newsom is doing out in California. What is it, by 2035 or something like that? He's saying no gas vehicles on the streets.
If, by the way, you're listening to this in California and you can't hear what we're saying, in a half an hour, your electric will come back on and you'll be able to go back and watch all of it.
Smoke, too. Now, here's going to be a couple things that they will not agree with us on. Okay, President Trump was the first president to address the March for Life event. I think you and I have actually talked about this in the past. I and 29 of my family members are a product of rape, right? So my grandfather was a product of rape, and so all of his descendants, if you go down the family tree and everything, had that happen and had it been an abortion, 30 of my family members wouldn't be here today. I don't see arguments for it at all. You know,
Are we going to debate abortion right here?
No. I think, look, this is a debate that's always happening. It's always going on and everything. But again, we're the party of science, right? The reason why the left is losing the argument on science, why they hate the fact that when you go to an abortion clinic that in some cases ultrasounds are required to get the abortion, is because science is on our side. And it's showing that there's a living baby in there, and that it's kicking and that it's responding to pain. And at 24 weeks, with some scientific help on the outside of the womb, these babies can actually survive. They're losing the argument.
I'm pro-life across the board. What I would like to see President Trump do is use the issue as part of his talks about race. That you talk about Black Lives Mattering, and I know this is something I've not come up with. I've seen other people saying. But what this does, think of the millions of Black lives that would otherwise today be in the world and be productive and be contributing and are not here today because of these abortion mills like Planned Parenthood.
It took until this year for Planned Parenthood to actually come out against their founder, Margaret Sanger, for the atrocities that she committed. Because as the founder of Planned Parenthood, after she went over and studied with the Nazis in Germany on their eugenics programs to bring it back here to America, she set up shop in urban areas specifically to rid the population of blacks, other minorities, and the mentally retarded.
Well,
that is who she specifically went after.
Forgive me if I don't accept their denunciation of her, as they're committing a million abortions a year.
They still give out the Margaret Sanger Award.
So I mean, please, right. You either believe in the sanctity of life or you do not, and it's not a black or white issue, and it's not a blue or red issue.
Yep. ACB coming in the house.
I don't know what that means.
Amy Coney Barrett. Oh. Listen, in regards to that, real quick, I don't think that we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. I just don't see it happening. But it brings a national conversation to light, and I think that's
it ought to happen. It's probably one of those issues that 100 years from now, our followers will look back on us and say, "How could they have done that?"
I couldn't agree with you more. We look back on slavery right now as an atrocity, and I think in the future generations are going to look back at the genocide that we committed in the Planned Parenthood abortion clinics and say, what the hell were you guys thinking? Well, I mean, this is clearly wrong.
I hope that they're more forgiving of us than our current culture is forgiving of our own past.
Yeah, no kidding. Absolutely. So in regards to that, too, shortly after taking office, President Trump reinstated and expanded an expanded Mexico City policy blocking $9 billion in aid from funding abortion internationally. So, listen, this boggles my mind here, right? So not only are we funding abortion here in this country, which I believe is morally reprehensible and everything, but we're funding over $9 billion to other countries for abortions. And not to mention a lot of these abortion clinics, especially with Planned Parenthood, through this term.
Have we stopped sending condoms to Africa? Like, this is the problem with all of government, the duplicity.
Listen, there's a lot of survival.
On one hand, we send condoms, and on the other hand, we fund abortions. Now, if one's not working, I mean, come on, this is ridiculous.
Yep. But what I was going to say, was it under the Obama administration, under the first portion of Trump's administration, when they came out and found out that Planned Parenthood was illegally selling the body parts?
I think it was the end of Obama, but I could be wrong. And it had nothing to do with Obama. We're just looking for a time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Shortly after, okay, so that was that one. The administration formed a new
Take two.
The administration formed a new Conscience and Religious Freedom Division to protect religious freedom. Again, that's a huge thing because, listen, that's a First Amendment issue. Most people couldn't even tell you. Listen, if I asked a liberal to name the 5 parts of the First Amendment, they could maybe do 2. And they're going to wonder, what the hell? There's 5?
I'm not sure most people. I've been running trivia shows for 12 years, and it comes up as a question periodically. And you'd be surprised how little people actually know. Listen, it's why the Pilgrims came here in 1620. Absolutely. It is part of the First Amendment of the Constitution. And liberals do not respect the freedom of religion. You see that in court case after court case, everything from the sisters, what do they call it? The Baltimore nuns, the Sisters of the Poor. I can't remember their proper name. I'm sorry, but they are part of Obama.
Baltimore?
Yeah,
Sisters will get the hell out of there.
Well, it was part of Obamacare was that all of these outlets had to provide abortion as part of their employment package, and that's obviously a violation of people's freedom of religion. We've seen the cake baker in Colorado and in Washington State. So these are major issues, and I hope ACB, as you call her, I'm not ready to do the initial thing with it. I think we're not quite as cool as the left, but yeah.
So actually, this goes right to what you were saying. In 2017, the president issued an executive order to promote free speech and religious liberty. This helped faith-based groups give health care coverage to 13.7 million Americans. I thought we were trying to take health care away from Americans as Republicans, but whatever.
Well, here's the thing, America. When somebody gives you something, they have the power to take it away from you. Absolutely. It is a better system where you go out and obtain it by yourself and you own it, and then nobody can take it away from you.
The DOJ announced nearly $100 million in grant funding to hire hundreds of additional law enforcement officers. Now, this brings up a really interesting topic because, again, this might be something that the left disagrees with us on. But I would point towards education, okay? I'm talking public education, okay, not education of officers, but it does play into that. What I've been hearing for a very long time from people that support the public education system is when schools in Baltimore, schools in Philadelphia, schools in Detroit are failing, instead of reorganizing and restructuring those programs and those public school programs and everything, what they say is that we need to fund them more, right? So you see the federal government just throwing stacks of money at these school districts in the inner cities and everything to better their education. We're ranked at 27th in the world in regards to public education. People today couldn't take a civics test that was given to third graders back in the early 1900s. But my point here is, if the problem with our police officers across the country right now is a lack of training, or in that case, to extend it out, a lack of education, why aren't we saying we need to fund the police officers more in regards to education and training to make them better at their jobs like we're doing with the public schools?
Well, because it's about sloganeering, not about solutions.
Absolutely. Well, and that's my point. If they were really moral on this topic, that's exactly what they would be pushing.
I think I'm for police reform, and I support the police, but I think there are things we could be doing differently, and we don't need to get into the nuts and bolts of it here. But you use the word education. I've been waiting to hear that word because Trump, was it last week or the week before, came out with his executive order on teaching in America. They're calling it the 1776 initiative, I think is what they're calling it.
Yeah,
that is, if that gets through and it gets implemented, that will be the single most important achievement of his presidency. It will be more important than 3 Supreme Court justices. It will be more important than tax cuts, than Middle East peace, because
both sides right now are playing for
half of our country, half of the people who live here hate this country and don't know anything about it. They think capitalism is the problem because they look around and they see a world where they can't acquire capital. Well, folks, this is not capitalism that we're living in. Our country is more than 50% socialist at this point. So if they can do that, that would be amazing.
Yep.
I didn't mean to make you think. I'm sorry.
No. I was just actually thinking of what you were talking about, hating America and everything. I saw a post. It was a meme. Okay. And memes are usually meant to be funny and everything, but it really had me scratching my head in disbelief at how true it is. It said, "Isn't it scary to realize that it's safe to assume that anyone flying the American flag on their home is a conservative now because liberals hate America that much?"
Yeah. And I mean, the idea that the flag, when did support for law and order become racist? You forgot to warn me to turn my phone off. I'm sorry, folks. All right. When did support for law and order become a racist idea? It defies logic.
I think that's a media term, to be honest with you, because if you look at the minority neighborhoods that are being lit on fire right now and destroyed, the minorities in those neighborhoods are saying, these groups do not speak for us. We need police to come in here.
Of course. And now you're talking about CompuStat policing in New York, and every one of these communities, the residents, regardless of their color, are screaming for more police officers. Old ladies don't want to come down the steps of their building and get their mail and have to pass thugs in the stairwell smoking pot and doing drug deals, obviously.
Yeah. And let's be honest, the other thing I need to point out here, too, is that the people that are burning down these minority neighborhoods and causing riots are mostly white liberals.
College educated. Yeah, listen. We did this on a previous podcast, but in very short form. You take God out of people's lives and church. You destroy the American family with policies. It wasn't by design, but Great Society programs destroyed particularly the black family, but the white family too. And so kids have no socialization skills. You send them to failing schools.
When they're at home.
You send them to failing schools where they're learning nothing of value, and then you send them out into the world where you put a minimum wage of $15 an hour, so they're unhireable because they're not worth $15 an hour for their force. What do you expect to happen?
Yep. Kind of going along with that here, President Trump signed an executive order to restore state and local law enforcement's access to surplus equipment that can be used to help keep our communities safe. So funding more for the kind of equipment that they need, and especially during times like this.
I think we just covered this on a previous podcast, but if you're listening and you're interested, you should look up Peel's 9 Rules of Policing. That's what I would implement right off the start. This is from the original constable in England who kind of developed civilian policing. And it basically talks about having respect, approaching every citizen with respect. And you can read them for yourselves, but I'm not sure. I don't like the militarization of the police. That's not something I would favor. On the other hand, I do see a need. If you're going to raid a drug house, you're going to need to be armed to protect yourself.
Yeah. Here's something that really hits home to me, because one of the organizations that
Did you just give me the George Bush looking at your wall. Are you bored?
No. I just need to make sure that we get off in time for the debate, because I think we have more people arriving upstairs here above our bunker.
Joe Biden's right next door.
No, one of the organizations that we donate to as a family, quite a significant sum, is the Operation Underground Railroad Foundation for human trafficking. So I feel that this is really important. I mean, if liberals, listen, I think liberals can get on board with being against human trafficking. I would hope that would be the case. So the president signed the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, which tightens criteria for whether countries are meeting standards for eliminating traffic. Let me just go through these real quick. President Trump signed the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act, which authorized $430 million to fight sex and labor trafficking. He also signed the Abolish Human Trafficking Act, which strengthens programs supporting survivors and resources for combating modern slavery, which would be a great discussion. I really wanted to... Well, if you go to the YouTube channel right now, you can actually see that I've taken the podcast into the realm of more interviews, and I would love to get an interview with Tim Ballard of Operation Underground Railroad and talk to him about the process of reintegrating the victims into society and getting them education and what goes into that, because I think that's the part that maybe what's missing in society that people aren't really seeing.
Yeah, I would love to do that podcast again.
President Trump ended the devastating defense cuts of the past administration and has secured historic investments to rebuild our military. Okay, so we're off the trafficking. Again, I just think that that's really important. How can, if anybody's against that, get out of the country. Like,
well, I would agree with you, but then you see this law in California that the governor just signed, making sex between a 14-year-old and a 24-year-old legal. I know it's a little more nuanced than we're going to get into on the podcast, but there's nothing anymore that I think you say you just take for granted. We would all be against this because it ain't so.
Well, here's the thing. The pastor, our pastor, the pastor that we go to see on Sundays and everything, just said, was it 2 weeks ago or something like that, that the reason why California is probably doing that is because of the actions that the Trump administration is taking in taking down a lot of people for pedophilia type actions. And that California is just starting to change the laws now so that those people in California can't get in as much trouble. I mean, we're seeing celebrities move across the ocean to Greece and stuff because they're getting tied to Epstein. Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is a big issue. And, you know, I'm not a QAnon or I've never even been to that website. I don't know much about it. I just heard it for the first time last week. Someone told me what it was actually about.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. It's anonymous, right?
Yeah, somehow. I don't even know, to be honest with you. But the whole premise is this child sex trafficking at the higher echelons and, you know, the higher levels of government and everything like that. And I'm like, listen, I can't focus on conspiracy theories. I need to focus on what I can see.
I need evidence. That's what we deal in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that being said, these celebrities and politicians are starting to drop like freaking flies because of all the pedophilia crap. So it's like there's something out there about it. You know? There
is something. I mean, I've heard that it's something to do with the gay community. This new law, I can actually make an argument for why somebody over 18 should be legally allowed to have sex with somebody under 18. You're an 18-year-old high school senior. Your girlfriend is a 17-year-old high school senior. Right, yeah. Okay, I'm not in favor of them having sex in the first place, sure, but I'm not in favor of making it against the law. Right. Okay, so there are justified circumstances, but 14 should never be legal to have sex. No. Period.
Another interesting juxtaposition too is that they want to lower the voting age to 16 because they believe,
of course they do,
but then they want their kids on their health care plan until 27, 28 because they're apparently children until that age. Well, you need to make up your mind. You're being a hypocrite.
Listen, well, again, things you'd think we could agree on, but you can't. I think Republicans should fight to make it 25 to vote. You should. I know the poll tax is like a not popular thing, but I think you should have to either own property, pay taxes, or be married to somebody who owns property or pays taxes. And let me put it this way: I don't think you should be a net taker from this society and be able to vote. Period, because you got a dog in the fight.
That's in best case scenario. I agree with you. I think the American dream is everybody gets their say and everything, and I get that. But I agree with you that, you know, when you have skin in the game, it's more important to you and you actually understand the circumstances under which you're acting. If
your skin in the game is I'm getting $800 a month in SSI or food welfare, WIC, whatever, I don't consider that skin in the game. If you have an investment in a community, you've made $100 million investment to build a business here, you have a skin in the game that you'd like to see the police operating. You'd like to see the fire department operating. You'd like to see the parking authority operating. That's a totally different skin in the game.
Okay. I'm just going to keep going. Sorry. So we're actually talking about the military. Now, one of the interesting things I heard on the Joe Rogan podcast recently, Tim Kennedy was on there, and he was talking about how under the Obama administration, they were funded about a third of what they're currently funded. And when you actually see what kind of effect that has on the military, because when you fund them to a good extent and release the hounds of war on an objective, we annihilated ISIS within months.
Well, this is mostly because of the numbers of increased women in the military. So at 77 cents a dollar, we're saving 23 cents for every dollar we spend now.
Yeah. We should be happy. President Trump is supporting America's men and women in uniform, securing the largest military pay raise in nearly a decade. Well, hey, listen, they deserve that money a lot more than the people that are sending them over there, which is the Senate.
Now, if Wolf would just reopen the bars, they could go spend it. All right.
Exactly. President Trump empowered our military commanders with broad authority in order to take the fight to ISIS, and the results were clear. ISIS has lost nearly all of its territory, more than half of which has been liberated since Trump took office. All of ISIS territory in Iraq was successfully liberated. ISIS self-proclaimed capital city, Raqqa, has been recaptured. And the ISIS territorial caliphate has been defeated, and President Trump has announced that he is bringing American troops in Syria home. Again, this is a warmongering president who is actually trying to end wars and bring them back home. Okay. Anything about the military at all?
No.
Okay.
Go military. Pro military.
Yeah, absolutely. President Trump held a historic summit with Chairman Kim Jong-un, bringing beginnings of peace and denuclearization to the Korean Peninsula. Big word, sorry about that. President Trump followed through on his promise to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and move the American embassy there, which again was promised by the last three presidents, never pulled
mandated by law, not promised, mandated by law.
Yep. President Trump withdrew the United States from the UN Human Rights Council due to its bias against Israel. So this is, again, you know, I'm hearing a lot of people telling me that their Jewish friends are not voting for Trump because he doesn't do anything, or he's anti-Israeli or anti-Jewish. You know, and it's like, what the hell are you? What source are you getting this stuff from when he is bartering peace in the Middle East around? Specifically for Israel.
Yeah, again, I'm no expert on this, and we'll do this quickly, but Reform and conservative Jews are mostly cultural Jews, not theological Jews, and they are consistently progressives and left-wingers. But to make the argument that Trump is anti-Israel or anti-Jewish when his daughter converted to Judaism, his grandkids are Jewish, he's been Netanyahu's naming streets after him. I mean, let's be honest.
Yep, absolutely. President Trump secured a record $73.1 billion in funding for the Department of Veteran Affairs to provide quality medical care for our veterans. Again, can anyone disagree with this?
Nope.
Right? Take care of the people that fight for us, for our freedoms, for other people as well. Again, go listen to the Joe Rogan podcast with Tim Kennedy, because he'll tell you that when a lot of people are saying that we're over there policing the world, they don't understand what the hell they're talking about, because we go over there and where, you know, buildings look like at the end of the World War II, Berlin bombed out and everything. You go back a couple months later, a couple of years later, and they got Starbucks on the corner.
Throwing money,
they're enjoying life.
Throwing money at things is usually not a good solution. So it's not the money that I'm in favor. But if you talk to veterans around here who used to have to drive to Stroudsburg or to Scranton to see a doctor, but now they can go.
YouTube page, hit subscribe for that. Also, while you're there, go and head over and find the listen right here, the Facebook page, where I'm going to actually be taking the stream of the debate tonight and streaming it on my page and commenting with just typing in on my phone and everything. I wanted to do it with live commentary, but I
will they be able to comment too then?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so we'll look forward to hearing from all of you then, and let us know what you think.
Yeah. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit like on the Facebook page, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow at GenYConservative without the E on the end. I appreciate everyone being here. Good luck.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good luck to President Trump tonight, and good luck to America. God bless America, and have a great night.